Hello everyone, today I'm reviewing Earth for you. Now I did get a bit of a reviewer discount on this, but I did otherwise pay to get Earth. I just thought I'd better mention that. This game is for 1 to 5 players. I've played it between the 2 and 4 player count range. It is fairly quick. It says up to 90 minutes on the box, and yes, that's what you're going to be getting. Let's roughly go over how the game plays to give you an understanding, and then I'll try and give you some pros and cons to let you know if Earth should be in your collection. In Earth, you're going to pay soil to play cards from your hand into a bit of a tableau, a 4x4 grid that you're going to start anywhere in that grid and then build out adjacent to that, including diagonals. You're going to be then limited to a 4x4 grid, so as soon as you've done a 4, you can no longer, say, go to the left or right of that, but you can still shift it up and down. You're going to be, on your turn, choosing one of 4 different actions, and they're nicely reminded to you even at the top of the player board. The first one, if you choose the green action, you are going to get to play 2 cards from your hand, paying the soil costs, which are at the top of the card. Then you get to draw 4 cards and keep one of them, discarding the other 3. Then you also will be triggering any green abilities on your player board from stuff during setup or played cards in your tableau. Now, this is the bit that gets the game going. While you're doing that, everyone else around the table is doing a lesser green action. They get to play 1 card from their hand, paying the costs, and they're going to be drawing 1 card and then triggering their green abilities. If I take the red option instead, I will get 5 soil to put onto my player board. Useful for playing those cards. I'll also get to then put 2 cards from the deck onto my compost pile, which are points at the end of the game. Then I'll trigger my red or multicoloured abilities from my board or my cards, and my opponents, while I'm doing that, will get 2 soil or get to take 2 cards from the deck and compost them. So a bit of a choice, and so somewhat of a lesser action, and then they'll trigger their red or multicoloured abilities. Yes, you're probably seeing a theme. Basically, it's a lesser version. The blue action is 6 cubes. Now, some plants will have spaces for these green cubes or sprouts. They are then placed onto them, and you can remove them at any time, although not partway through an action, to gain soil. So again, reminded here, you would discard 3 of those cubes from your flora, and then you'll gain 2 soil to spend to put more cards into your tableau, and so on and so on. While you're doing the 6 cubes and gaining 2 soil and then triggering your blue or multicoloured abilities, then your opponents are going to be either getting 2 green sprout cubes or getting 2 soil and then triggering their abilities of those colours. And the last option you can take is basically to be drawing cards. The yellow option is draw 4 cards and put down 2 of what I call tree trunk pieces, and your opponents will then trigger your yellow or multicoloured abilities, while your opponents are choosing 2 cards or 2 of those tree trunk bits. So effectively, while there's second parts and all of those effects triggering, you're going to be playing cards, getting the resources to pay for them, getting some cubes, which are going to most of the time be used for triggering. Those sprouts are used for like triggering some of your tableau abilities or drawing cards. And that's the way the game plays out. You take one of the actions, your opponents take a lesser version, it then goes on round clockwise the table. You go until someone has finished their 4x4 grid. At that point, they get to put one of their tokens down onto the scoreboard. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. To basically say they finished their grid first, and then you finish the round, so make sure everyone's played the same number of turns, and then you count points. So what was that scoreboard thing in the middle? Well, it doesn't track many points during the game, but there are 4 main objectives. You'll also have a personal objective. That might be, for instance, having 8 cards in your tableau with a certain type of flora. So like there's a little mushroom bush, a tree type one, etc. So if you've got enough of that symbol, you'd get it. So get 8 of them. Whoever gets there first gets 15 points. Whoever's second would get 11, and then it reduces down. And then there's also some end game scoring ones. Maybe that's 2 points for every single sun icon on cards in your tableau and on your player board. So they're things to sort of pay attention to. Choosing, maybe while you've got this hand of cards, oh, this works for those objectives, while this one works for that one. That's the choice there that's built up from that central scoreboard. So you're going to be trying to play the right cards into your tableau, spending your soil on them, triggering certain abilities, and that's also later on going to change what you're picking, because you're like, well, if I pick blue, all of these cards are going to activate. And then once someone's finished their 4x4 grid, you work out who has the most points after you finish the round. And that's roughly how you play Earth. It's not that much more complicated, to be honest. There's a few things in setup, a few choices, basically giving you a certain number of cards or a certain number of soil resources and different things, as well as a couple of either abilities or end game point scoring just for you. And that is Earth. Now to actually review the game, let's start off with the components, which are like 80, 90% woo, and 10, 20% ah. So let's touch on the good stuff. First of all, the deck of cards. It's a huge deck. This is a fraction of the deck. It's a massive deck, but it's got some really nice art. I think it's basically images, pictures that really sort of bring the different things to life. The flora, and the locations and stuff that you're building, I think they're really cool, and it just gives a little bit of vibrancy often with the different types of plants. They're cool and they sort of bring that brightness, certainly bring a lot of greenness to the player board, if that's what you want to call your tableau. So production wise from them, that's really good. The green cubes for those sprouts, I really like that. And an interesting thing, there's even green things in the punch board. Don't be confused like I was when I saw them on the punch board originally, because I was like, what are these used for? They're not really said about in the rules. They are effectively, if you've run out of sprout cubes, never run out of sprout cubes. If you do though, then you can use those as a suitable alternative. So that's kind of useful. They use some of the otherwise empty area of the punch board for that. That's quite cool, but not really necessary. The tree trunk pieces, as I like to call them, with their little hats on, I think they look absolutely fantastic. To be honest, when I saw those the first time, I thought, that's a shame they're going to be only in the Kickstarter version. No, they are in the official game. Now let's talk about the parts that, well, do let the game down a little bit production-wise. First of all, the soil tokens. In the standard normal version, they're these little cardboard chits. It's nice that there's 5s and 1s, but they really match the colour of this part where you're supposed to put your soil. They match this part of the player board. So it's very easy to sort of missee them a little bit. Comparing them to the Kickstarter components, those little soil tokens, they're just a lot nicer. Obviously they're going to be, but the ones included in the game, they are perfectly usable. I do like that there's the 5s, because it just makes it a little bit easier to count things up, but they do really look the same colour as this, and a little bit fiddly with chits. The other thing I also found a little bit fiddly, it's just a little bit for me, sometimes components, if they're just on the small side, I found the leaf tokens just a little bit fiddly. They are used for when you put them onto the score tracks to sort of say, I've done this objective, I've done it first, so I can claim my 15 points at the end of the game. So you don't touch them very often, you're not really using them very often, although you can use one to track what action is going on at the top of the board. But it's kind of like, it doesn't really matter because you're hardly ever touching them, so minor negative on the components, but otherwise the cards look great, they shuffle nicely, that's super important for a game like this. And the things you're putting onto those cards, the sprout cubes or the tree trunky things, really nice. As I alluded to, the deck is huge. So some people are going to hate that. I absolutely love it. If you are the sort of gamer which, going through the huge deck, up to here, take the top card off, it's not what I wanted, this game is so luck-based, then Earth is probably not going to be for you. However, it's a huge deck, you're often drawing many cards, you can have a huge hand, there's no hand limit, and then sometimes discarding, say, into the compost pile or just into a discard pile in the middle. You've got plenty of opportunity to get a lot of cards and then just work with what you've got. It can be frustrating sometimes. Some of the objectives are like, get one with a colour in the name or get one with a country in the name or something. So it's like Japanese or something and it's underlined on the card. That's a nice, helpful little thing. Or I think the colours might be in italics. I can't quite remember what's done in what way. Or there's another one that's bolded and it's like, okay, I think that's when it's like monkey flower. As a really poor example that's not actually in the game, but it's like one of the objectives is get so many with an animal in the name. That would be one. Yeah, if it can be frustrating if you're going through the deck and not getting any of those, or especially if it's like score for 2 of them and you've got one and I cannot find another one. Yeah, that can be frustrating. If that's going to kill the game for you, Earth's not for you. But if you can just, right, these are the cards I've got, what's the best I can do? I think you'll certainly enjoy the huge deck, because it does often mean you draw a lot of cards and have a good amount of choice of what you're playing down into your tableau. Earth is definitely a point salad style game, and what I mean by that is you are getting points from so many different things. Every single card you play, be it an event, like most of those lose you points, anything in your tableau that's going to gain you points. Every single card, some are zeros, but every single card you add to your tableau will give you a number of points. That number can range from like 0 to like 9 or 10 or something like that. Then there's so many cards like these terrain location cards that you're playing that give you points depending on what you've got in your tableau or maybe just around the table. It's like whoever's got the most tree symbols in their tableau, you score that many points. That's quite cool, and it also means you're looking around at what the other players are doing, because otherwise there's not huge amounts of interaction otherwise, apart from rushing for the sort of central objectives as quick as you can to try and get most points out of them. But that's another place you're getting points. You've got personal objectives as well as those public ones. There's many places you can get points. Even the things you're composting, every single one of those is worth a point. So you're going to get points from doing many, many different things. And it's just sort of your opportunity of trying to get as many points as possible. And I think that's really cool because it all builds into the choices that you're making throughout the game. And throughout the game, you are always involved. And one of the things I really liked from Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition, and there are previous games that have done it as well, is when someone else is doing something, you are doing it too. But you're getting sort of a half-baked version. They're playing 2 cards, you are going to play 1 card. And sometimes you're really wanting them to do a certain thing because it's like, please don't do the green action. I don't have enough soil to plant the 1 card I want. Oh, they've taken the red action, I can take soil. Now if you take, they've taken the red action. Now if you take the green action, I've got enough soil, I could play my 1 card. But maybe I don't want you to take the green action because if it comes around to me, maybe I could afford 2 cards. So it's a really interesting one. And sometimes partway through the game, you're like, I've not really taken the green action enough. I've got like 4 cards down. You've got like 8 cards down because you've taken the green action and played 2 cards each time. Wow, you're filling out your 4x4 grid really fast compared to me. So again, it comes back to the choices, but also you're always involved. There's very little downtime. Yes, there's some downtime when it comes to people with super duper amounts of cards in their hands. What are they discarding into their compost? What are they playing and stuff like that? But often it's like, okay, even on your turns around the table. And I'm really sort of invested in what you're going to pick. And that's super important. I'm not just, watching what you're doing. I'm actively sort of invested in this is what I want you to pick. Okay, you've not picked that. How can I make this work for me though? And part of the brilliance of that is that the playtime for Earth is really rapid. It does come across as a bit of a terraforming Mars engine building-y sort of experience as you're building out that tableau. They've all got abilities that are then triggering on your turns and opponents' turns based on what's picked. So there's some real vibes of building your engine there with a huge deck of cards. So I can see the comparisons between this and Terraforming Mars, but the speed of this. My first game of Terraforming Mars, to put into context, for 2 people, that went on for like 3 hours. Yes, it's drastically come down since with Prelude and Play, but this was an hour and a half, 2 people, and pretty much included all of the teach time as well. Wow, that's really rapid for a game that feels like it can really chain and build combos and build that engine and have a sort of a really good amount of choices. It's all crammed into a really short amount of time. Now it's partially because you're doing things on other people's turns, but it's also, as the game goes on, you're triggering many more things that are maybe giving you more soil, giving you more cards, giving you more of those sprouts or whatever. And then it's like, I can spend the sprouts, more soil now, I can play cards, and it sort of speeds up like any good engine builder towards the end. And right at the end, it's really like, right, this is the end. How can I just get as much as possible out of my engine, because this is the last round, and then we're counting points. Super quick, and I think that's one of the definite highlights and sort of selling points of Earth. And Earth, in that respect, is effectively unchallenged. It feels like a big game, but it is so much quicker than sort of an Ark Nova or Terraforming Mars. Unlike those other games, though, I don't have a preferred player count for Earth. And that's quite unusual for a game like this. I've not played it at solo, and I've not played it at the full 5 players, though I'm not actually put off because of the speed and the fact that even at 5 players, well, the 4 players that I have played it at, it's so quick round the tables still, and you're getting so much between your turns that I don't have a problem with playing it at 5. Some of these other games, it's like, I really want to play it at 2 because it's so much shorter, or I can just have so much more sort of choice. I'm not having to wait to see what other players are doing around the table. In this, on those other players' turns, you're getting choices, you're making decisions, and it's still rapid. At 2, I really like the fact that it's so back and forth. Almost sometimes you've finished an action, your opponent's doing one, and it's already back to you, and you almost don't have enough thinking time because it's already back to you, and you've got to do your next turn. At the same time, some of the sort of cards are built so much. It's like, I want other players around the table because this is scoring me the most for whoever's done the best in it. And there's a bit more of a race at the higher player counts for those sort of public objectives in the middle. I still love it at both ends, or in the middle. And that is a really good thing for Earth. So let's wrap up. It's rapid, it's really good at a variety of player counts, and it's not slowing down as you add players, because you're still triggering stuff around the table as other people make choices. But you're making so many choices, you're activating a cool tableau of cool looking cards. Yeah, it's got some negatives. If you don't like a deck that's a bit lucky because it's a huge deck, will you get the cards that you need? But if the game that you're sort of looking for is, I'm going to agree there's a huge deck of cards, but I'm just going to deal with what comes out of it. Wow. Earth is a fantastic game. I can see why it's been so hyped, why it was selling out at UK Games Expo, why it's been so hard to get hold of, I'd highly recommend Earth. Now, please do check out other news reviews and stuff on the channel, including a video I'm going to be putting together for my sort of favourite, the best Earth cards and the worst ones that are in the deck, that if they're in your hand, compost them right away. But until then, have a fantastic Earth Day gaming.